What can I say about Joshua Van that hadn't already been said already? This guy is a beast. And to prove it furthermore, he is going to step in place of Manil Kopp to fight Brandon Royval. Manil Kopp's out, Joshua Van is in, and Brandon Royval, I would argue, is in a little bit more trouble. I think Manil Kopp is a lot of trouble for Royval already, but I don't know. I think Van has just as much dog in him as Manil Kopp does. First and foremost, it's a bummer. I am a Manil Kopp fan. I would have liked to see Manil Kopp get past Brandon Royval and finally fight for the title, because I do think Manil Kopp could give Pantoja some issues. But this is a big shot for Van, a huge shot for Van. If Van gets past Royval, he has a title shot in his hands. And Joshua Van has won the crowd over again and again. He's extremely tough. He's got such a chin. He's a 5-round fighter. He's a dog. He's got power. He knows how to brawl, and he loves to brawl. Dangerous in the pocket, and then some. He's a really good fighter. And I would love to see if he has what it takes to get a UFC gold belt wrapped around his waist. But at first he has to get past Brandon Royval, who is a really dangerous fighter, a really gifted boxer, knows how to throw feints well, and very dangerous if he is seemingly near finished, which he might be against Joshua Van. I think Van can land some big shots that throw Royval to the ground. But when Royval is thrown to the ground, Van needs to be cautious about putting his foot on the gas and just gunning for Royval after that. Because if he does, Royval could, throw a devastating spinning back elbow or something like that. That's just, it comes out of nowhere, and it possibly could clip Joshua Van. But I'm not sure if it does, because Van is very smart as well. But yeah, Royval versus Van will be a great fight. Really highly skilled fight. A lot of great pocket boxing, I think, is in store. I think some components of this fight will go into Royval's favor, especially throwing punches at range. I think Royval will have the advantage there. He's got a great reach. He knows how to throw the jab really well. I think it's going to be up to Van to control the pressure and be the one on the front foot, and always try to initiate pocket boxing here with Royval. I think Van needs to get really close to Royval, and although that could be dangerous at times, I think it needs to be done, because I think Royval will have no issue with picking apart Van off the back foot without letting Van get close to him. Again, ground game is always a component of MMA, and it could be a component here, but I'm sure it won't be. I think both of these guys love to strike, and I think it will be a thriller on the feet. But I just can't help but feel like Van is going to bring that energy, and that Van knows he is extremely close to a title shot. Extremely close to a title shot. All he needs to do is get past Royval. And it's no easy night. It's not going to be an easy night for Van. It won't. Royval is dangerous. And like I said, he's really good at picking people apart, and he can do it off the back foot. It's going to be up to Van to do more than just throw a couple punches every 30 seconds on the front foot. Van needs to do more than just be on the front foot. He needs to be charging. He needs to be initiating that pocket. He needs to be initiating exchanges in the pocket. Van has to be not just pressuring, but extremely pressuring, if you get what I'm trying to say. Because if Van is just, he's on the front foot, but he's throwing punches not as frequently, Royval, as I've been saying, will have no issue with chilling on the back foot, throwing out feints, keeping Van guessing, but landing a lot of those jabs, and maybe even throwing a cross or a kick after that, and just building up points, building up that significant strike percentage, and beating Van via decision based off of that. And again, the other thing Van has to watch out for is potentially getting knocked out if Van does indeed drop Royval and decides to charge after Royval instead of being cautious of Royval's counter striking, especially when he's hurt. So I think if Van is cautious, but it's more complicated than that, because what I'm saying is Van has to be cautious, but not too cautious. Van needs to gun for pocket boxing in this fight, but Van should not be gunning for the finish. I think he just needs to pressure, engage in a lot of pocket boxing exchanges, and if he does drop Royval, he might need to let Royval get back up. You know, because I think running after Royval is going to put Van in a world of hurt unless Van is cautious, which he needs to be. So at the end of the day, the bottom line for what I'm trying to say is Van needs to be cautious after a successful pocket boxing exchange. Before the exchange, throw caution to the wind, press forward, and get Royval in those pocket boxing exchanges. Again, it's a fight game. Anything can happen. Maybe if Van pressures Royval in the pocket boxing, Royval throws something dangerous from there. But I think Van needs to run the risk of that and engage with Royval. Because, like I said, Royval seemingly will use the reach advantage to his extreme advantage, and Van needs to be able to work around that. And I think the only way to work around that is to be more aggressive and engage in those close range exchanges more. And I think Van is really good there because Van is a brawler. He knows how to brawl well. And in those situations, I think he will be able to connect on Royval big. It's just what he does after that worries me. So yeah, I think Van will connect big. He's got to be cautious about what he does afterwards. You let me know what you think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. I love each and every one of you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. Glove knowledge.